Right, welcome back. This is Toby, episode 20, and the final part. This one I'm going to do a bit different. I wasn't happy with the original soundtrack I recorded for it, so I'm going to pinch one of BP's ideas, Bipolar Prophet's ideas, and I'll tell you a little bit about my family. Not too much, you'll just get bored, but I'm going to tell you a little bit about grandfather, hopefully father, and possibly a little about myself. Depends on how long I take, how long I can ramble on for. My grandfather was a soldier in the First War. He went over to France August 16th, 1914, which makes him an old contemptible, which is part of the old original army, which was near enough destroyed by 1915. So we was one of the early batches, not the first batch, but one of the very early batches to go over, which points to the fact he was probably a regular soldier before the war. It could well have been an island, which there was big problems in Ireland at the time. Because Ireland, the whole of Ireland, was owned, run by the British. I was going to say for better or worse, but for most of us for worse. But it's a highly political and still a very charged subject, so I shan't go into that. But he, arrived in France August 16th. He came under fire in the first 3 months of war. I should imagine he took part in the retreat from Mons and some of the other early battles when it was before it got into trench warfare. But the main bit I want to tell you about was 1915, second battle at Ypres. First time gas was used. Not the first time it's ever used, but one of the first times it was used in a major fight, major battle. It had been used by both sides prior to that. The British had used some gas very haphazardly. The Germans had also used it in gas shells and such like, but this was the first time it was really used in anger. It broke the line at Ypres. The Ypres, for those who don't know, was the last major Belgian town, or the town of any size, still in Allied hands, so it was important that the Allies held it. Most of Belgium's defence relied on the Belgian army, the British army, and parts of the French army. The Brits held Ypres, which was what they call a salient, which meant it stuck out into the enemy line, so it was surrounded on three sides by the Germans. Like I say, gas was used there, it broke the line, and the mounted infantry came in, and as grandfather I think was in the mounted infantry group. I think he was possibly part of that, which is where he got gassed. It wasn't a bad gas, and it wasn't one of these ones where it's what they used to call a blighty wound, which you came home and that's your war over, which you're so badly scarred, but it did damage his lungs. And the fact he carried on smoking right until the end of his life didn't help either. But, because in those days they didn't know what smoking can do to you. But he was patched up in hospital, went back, but not back to the infantry. He joined a new unit which was known as the Heavy Machine Gun Corps. Again, if you don't study the First War, and it's one of my hobbies, studying the First War. I have got about 400 odd books on the subject downstairs. But the Heavy Machine Gun Corps was better known later in the war as the Tank Corps. And at that time the tanks were the highly top secret weapon. It was our super weapon. It was what was going to win the war for us. It's just a pity it wasn't more reliable, but he joined the machine gun corps, the Tank Corps. As he wouldn't talk about it, he already talked about the fact he was at Ypres, but he wouldn't go into more details when I knew him. Like a lot of soldiers and fighters from the First War, he didn't want to talk about it. Reading what I read, I can understand why it was not a pleasant, well, no war was pleasant, this was more unpleasant than most, but he survived the war. He came back to East Anglia, married a woman who became my grandmother, and they had 3 children, and one of those was my father. I'll speak a little bit about his father now. His courting days, well, he left school, well, first of all, his father left school at about 13 and went into a gardening job at the big house. Again, those who don't know, the big house was normally the Lord of the Manor. We was Britain, prior to the First War, or prior to the Second War, was still a very highly feudal nation. Well, there was more people who didn't have the vote and had the vote in those days. You had women who only just got the vote, and only certain women, and it wasn't what they call universal suffrage. Even then, it was what is just coming in. The father met mother in the local town outside of St Martin. Apparently, he used to laugh at it. He said, Mum and Dad laughed at it. His first words were, "Were you going to pay to take me to the pictures then?" And somehow, even with that pickup line, which even I wouldn't have the guts to use, it worked. I think partly because Mother wanted to get away from her home, where she was the one girl still at home, or the eldest girl still at home, and she was treated as the skivvy to the household. The maid, the one who had to do all the work, was the boys got everything. Caused a bit of rift in Mother's side of the family. We didn't speak to her much for years, but they were trying to stop her from getting married because they didn't want to lose their servant. So Mother left home and went to live with my grandparents for up until the wedding. Well, they got married, and in 1952 I turned up. For some reason Mother couldn't have any more kids. I like to think that was the fact they took one look at me and said, "God, look at that. What, I don't know what we did, but we're not doing it again." But one thing I remember was when Dad come home from the war, and a little bit about Dad's war service. He wasn't old enough to join the war at the start, and when he was called up in the 40s, I'm not certain exactly what year, he was called up to the Navy, and he went onto minesweepers. Now you think now, Navy ships, nice, well appointed ships, plenty of defence, not the minesweeper they used during the Second War. Minesweepers, mainly, there was some purpose-built ones, but mainly for the war, were converted trawlers. Probably the most dangerous thing you could float about near mines in. Very little armaments. I think they mounted a gun on them, but let's face it, the trawlers were not meant for firing guns, so you fired a gun and it weakened the structure of the ship. But he survived war, but he wouldn't talk about it too much. He used to say what he did was he spent the war at the Sparrow's Nest, which a little bit of geography for you. It's the most eastern point in Britain. It's near Lowestoft, and it is the most eastern point in Britain, the Sparrow's Nest. He spent his war there hands and blankets out. But I did learn after his death that he and who was to become his brother-in-law, who was going to marry Dad's sister, one of Dad's sisters, they missed the train to get back to the ship, and they spent the next 2 days chasing around, trying to catch up with the train to get to their ship. Dad ended up on a charge, and after he's put it, he went into the glass house, the brig, prison. I don't know for how long. He didn't say, he wouldn't say. It wasn't until he died I learnt more details. I know he spent part of the time chasing the not just chasing the train, but then when they got to the ship, it would already move to another port, and they were chasing around the countryside after this trawler, which by then had the title of a minesweeper. So I say he spent some time in prison for missing the ship. You had to have fairly tough discipline. But going to say he wouldn't talk too much about it. I haven't his medals. I have to go back a bit to that. I have grandfather's medals, including his 3 for the war and the bar for being under fire. Plus, I have his old contemptibles pin badges. They go down the family on to the eldest son or to the son. Because they went from grandfather when he died, grandmother gave him to dad. When he died, mother gave him to me. I'm not certain how I will pass them on to. I haven't any blood descendants. It will have to be one of my step children or step grandchildren. I think I might go to one of my step grandsons. Miss out a generation. Because well, they're an important artifact of the war. Anyway, get back to Dad. He came back from the war. He married Mum, and he got a job after the war on the same farm his grandfather was working on. And we got a tied cottage. Now, again, a little bit of history. Tied cottages are literally that. They are tied to your job. If you stop working for the place who owns the cottage, you lose your cottage immediately. Remember, in those days, in the 50s, no security of tenure, no recourse. If you didn't have it, if you didn't work for them for any reason, you were chucked out, or you could be chucked out. We had a little bit. Well, let's just go back a little bit to grandmother. For some reason, her parents moved to the village I was brought up in, when she was still a babe in arms, and they had this half a farmhouse. There was an old farmhouse which had been converted into Victorian times. I know when it was converted because after grandmother died, I went past there one time and I could see a young couple working on it, and I stopped and got off my bike and sort of introduced myself, and they said, "Yeah, come in and have a look. I will show you what we found here." And they found some old Victorian newspapers which had been part of the wall where they'd split the old farmhouse in two, and they'd moved things like the Dutch oven around, and when they'd split them. But grandmother had that for the rest of her life for what they call a peppercorn rent, a very low rent. I don't know exactly who owned the house. Must probably one of the smaller farmers in the district. But, so at least they were secure. But to get back to about 1956, grandfather by then was past that he couldn't really do anything, and the farmer wanted to get rid of him. So he did. He pensioned him off. But I don't know if Dad said anything that morning when grandfather was told he was no longer wanted his service to requirements, but he got the sack straight away. This was bad enough till the real clincher came in, and we want you at the house by 12 noon. This was about 8 o'clock in the morning. Luckily, as I say, grandparents had their house and there was room for us, so we moved in there until the council found a property. In the lovely days when council still had council houses, and we moved into somewhere what's meant to be for an old people's bungalow, 2-bedroom. Luckily it was big enough for us. You couldn't have visitors over to stay the night, but we had a relatively new house. I think we were the second people ever in there. with a large garden. You don't see that nowadays in England. Any house with a large garden for the ordinary people. But this had a great impression on me. Remember, I was only about 4 at the time, and it still lives with me. It turned me from a fairly moderate, or what could have been a fairly moderate person, to I'm now left wing, very left wing. And I put it all back to that one thing, where I could see what the bosses could do to you, and if they got the chance, they would. So we lived there. Dad managed to find another job. Try to remember where he went after that. I think he might have had a couple of trips out at sea, and he went to the local print works. One of the big print works in the country, Richard Clay, the Chaucer Press, been in the local town for donkey's years, and still there now. One thing I remember about the village where I was born, when I was young, we had, I'll just try and run through everything. We had a church, of course, a village hall, a village school, primary school. We had a shop, which was more like a mini department store. We had a sub-post office, a pub. There was an abattoir in the middle of the village. Not the best place for what that was I think I was still at school when a new one was built on the outskirts of the village, but it still had the abattoir. We had, excuse me, not certain in those days, but the mill we had was a flour mill then, or a feed mill. It was converted to a feed mill. Anyway, during that time, it may well have been a feed mill. Before I actually took much notice of the place. Several farms. So we had commerce, we had business. Oh, and I forgot, a smith. Not a blacksmith, a smith. No. Difference is a blacksmith specialises in horses and that, and a smith will do any iron work. And old Fred Lawrence would turn his hand to anything. And he was still going when I was naught but a lad. So we had everything. We had 4 or 5 buses a day in and out of the village. We had, and our local town was only about a mile away, so it was an easy walking distance. I would go back there. My mother still lives in the village, in the same house. I go back there now and I look round. The shop's gone, the post office is gone, the mill's gone, abattoir is still still running at the edge of the village. The pub almost closed, but I forgot one other business we had then, and we still got, was the gravel pits. And luckily, the owner of the gravel pits, and I know the guy quite well, I knew him quite well. He liked the pub so much he bought it, and he set it up as a brew pub. And apparently, it's doing great guns now. Just proves that big business doesn't always know what the hell they're talking about. Buses are less than they used to be. Oh, we also had a train station when I was young. It was right at the end of the end of the time this line was running. It was closed during the time I was growing up. Still a toddler, but it was there. The station house still survived for a long time. Actually, the bypass of the village is now on the old rail line. I wonder sometimes whether things have actually improved. Yes, it's nice to have all the bits and pieces of modern life, and I couldn't live now without the internet. I'll be the first to admit it. But I wonder if we have lost the soul of the villages. Oh, we still have a church. Oh, I forgot two other things we had, or three other things. Each parish used to have its own vicar. Not anymore. I think the vicar now runs five or six parishes. Not being a religious person myself, as I have mentioned one or two of the old Ridge videos, I am an atheist, and that is actually me. I am an atheist. Like it or not, that's me. So you got me there, a left-wing, radical, revolutionary atheist. I could make it worse by saying I don't like the royal family either, but I think we'd better leave it there. We also had a district nurse and a policeman in the village. And one of the things, as I got older, I'll come on to that in a moment. I went to the village school, primary school, from age 5 to 11, and we then set what was called the 11 plus to decide whether we went to grammar school or secondary modern. I loved primary school. We had two of the best teachers in the world, and it was literally that. There were two teachers. There was the headmistress and the teacher. That was it. The school was split into two. Get it out in around 8 was the split. 5 to round 8 you went into one class, and from 8 to 11 you went into the other class. You'd think it's not very good, you wouldn't be able to learn much. But we had one kid who joined the school aged about 8. He couldn't read and write. At the end of the year, first year he was there, he could read and write, and we were still getting a good education. And more important, we enjoyed school. We enjoyed going. This was when I went to secondary school. I hate the grammar school system. Not so much because I don't believe you should give the best, better teaching and what have you, or stretch them further, but basically because what you do with the rest. And I was a member of the rest. At that time, for every £2.10 shillings, £2.50, I'm not going to try and convert it to euros or dollars, that was spent on a grammar school pupil, 10 shillings was spent on someone at a secondary modern school. We got the worst teachers. We got the teachers who frankly nowadays some wouldn't be allowed near children. And a couple of us, when I was at school, would have ended up in prison nowadays. It was literally that bad. And of course, bullying. In those days, bullying wasn't frowned on. Bullying was a way of life. You were bullied. I was bullied. Luckily, I had friends who sought to bully out. I'd already made friends with some of the older kids when I went to secondary school, and the bully was sorted out. But it wasn't much good going to the teachers then, because most of the teachers were bullies. You're sitting in a classroom, not paying full attention to have a blackboard erased, come whistle. If you're lucky, whistling past your ear. If you're unlucky, it caught you inside the skull. Teachers who could not control their temper, and we had 3 of those, where the teacher who kicked one kid around the classroom on the first, when we first went there in his first lesson, he picked on one kid and literally kicked him around the classroom. As I say, it was not good. If there was a good teacher there, they were soon headhunted by the grammar schools. We did have one good teacher. He was the only one in the whole school to teach us, to treat us, not just as adults, but as human. For people who say school was the happiest days of life, I say good luck to you. for me, I couldn't get away from secondary school quick enough. Nothing would make me relive that 4 years ago. Absolutely nothing. You could give me £1 million and I would not do it. I would live somewhere young, life after I left school. Alright, anyway, I was lucky. I'm born 18th of December in 1952. Yes, my birthday's coming up. Don't all send presents. In those days, if you had a job to go to, if you were born a certain part of the year, which I was, you could leave at 15. Before, you know, once you're over 15, you could leave. I left. I had a job. I was offered a job at a local car accessory, motorcycle and cycle place, and I took it. I jumped at it. So there I was now, working. And at this time, the motorcycle bug took hold. And it really took hold. I got a bike as soon as I could at 16, which you could, again, in those days. You could ride your first bike at 16, pre-helmets. Helmets hadn't come in then, but they were to come in the next couple of years. As was all the other legislation to do with bikes. I had a little Suzuki 50, not the greatest of machines, and I think the next year, by the time I was 17 anyway, I bought a Suzuki T200, 200cc twin cylinder, 2-stroke. I'd also booked up to go to the Isle of Man. And one small point, I hadn't passed my test, but then I'd failed first time on the little 50. How the hell I ever failed on that? In fact, I think I should have passed on that one. But when I finally passed, about 3 or 4 weeks before I was due to set off the other man on the T200, I shouldn't have passed. I was an abysmal rider on that, for that test. But I somehow done enough to get the examiner to allow me to pass. So I went 17 years old to the Isle of Man for the first time, and the racing bug really bit in. I've been going to Snetton since, well, shortly after that first season, after I got the bike, I was going to Snetton regularly, which is our local track. And the bug really bit, and it bit harder and harder until the early 70s. I decided I would go. By this time I'd bought myself a T500 Suzuki, which is a 492cc twin cylinder 2-stroke, means absolutely nothing to most of you, and not overly powerful, rather overweight, but it was a lovely bike. The only problem was that the drum brakes were a little bit iffy, especially now I'm used to discs. I decided to go racing, so I joined half a dozen local clubs. I had my first meeting. I got lapped twice in a 6-lap race. I realised that standard brake linings was not good enough in the front wheel, and also standard rear shocks, especially Suzuki rear shocks, weren't good enough. Luckily I didn't have the standard Japanese tyres on. I know nowadays Japanese tyres are good. In those days they weren't. They were awful. So I done racing, and in that time I actually took part in the same race as the then current world champion Barry Sheen. Again, if you know anything about motorcycle racing, you will know Sheen's history. Won the world championship twice, had 2 really bad smash-ups, one at Daytona and another one at Silverstone. Ended his life, he moved out to Australia because the British weather was not suiting all his aches and pains. He died a few years ago, but he was a lovely fella. When he was one of the boys, and that meeting was the year after he won the world championship for the first time. He was living up near Wisbeach, and he wanted to get his bikes bedded in, ready for the coming Grand Prix season. He asked the then president of the Newmarket District Racing Club, if he could come and try his bikes out during the meeting, which was agreed, providing there was room on the grid, and 2, he didn't win the races. So he took part. He done 5 out of the 6 laps. I know all 6 lap racing those days with club riders. He done 5 out of the 6 laps and pulled in. But he was open to everybody in the pits. We could all go up there and have a yarn. I mean, he'd come round, have a look and see what you were doing. It was a great time to actually meet who was one of my heroes. And my real number 1 guy I hero worshipped was a chap called Stanley Michael Bailey Howard, better known as Mike the Bike. He retired before I got over the Isle of Man. He retired, I think, in '68 from Grand Prix riding. Done some riding at places like Daytona, for the Daytona 200, and 1 or 2 other big meetings, but he'd packed up. But he decided to come back to the Isle of Man, where he'd made his reputation, and he actually came back, and I think that was coming about 79 and 80 or 78, 79. I was over the Isle of Man. Luckily I'd booked up early for the digs, because there's no way you could get in with both Sheen and with both Howard and Reed riding in the race. Because Reed had said some things about the Isle of Man TT race that he didn't like the circuit, it shouldn't be allowed, and then he'd gone there in the previous year to Howard's return and won a race. Yes, he was not the best liked man on the island, shall we say that. And I still remember I was watching up at the bungalow when on the road, I don't know if you know, but they start 10-second intervals in TT races. When Howard came past Reed on the road after starting, I think at 20 seconds behind him, the cheer that went up. And so Howard won a race that year. The bikes he had, which were Yamahas, with his other bikes, he had the Ducati was the main one, which British dealer had turned up for him, Sports Motorcycles, and done a good job. And Yamaha had supplied the other bikes, the other races, which frankly were not worth Howard's time. The next year he came back, he had the same bike, but this time Ducati decided to cash in and do the work on it themselves, and made a real pig's ear of it. But he'd also picked up Suzuki. Suzuki had said, yes, we're backing with some bikes, and they did. They backed him with a 500 and a 680 square 4, 2-stroke square 4s. The 680 Howard rode but didn't like. It was instant death. The par was on and off. There was no intermediate on. You either had full par or you had no par. The 500 was a bit easy to ride, and he used that most of the time. And he won another race that year. On the Suzuki, after the Ducati let him down because of the work that the factory had done on it. If they'd have left well alone with the times he'd done the previous year, he might well have still won the race. That's a little bit of my history. In later years, and I got married very late in life, I was 39, I think, before the time I got married. I met a woman I cared for a lot, and I've been married now to her for rather long, to over 20 years now. No, it must have been 42, 43 when I married her. Mathematics, coach, mathematics. Yeah, and she's the person who means the most to me now. But as you can gather from what I said, that both my father and my grandfather and my mother me have meant, and in Mother's case still means a lot to me. One of the things I was quite happy about was that I was there at Dad's death. He was died in hospital after a long illness, and myself and my mother were there at his bedside. He woke up at about 4 o'clock in the morning, saw us there, spoke to us quite coherently, which he hadn't been for quite a while, and at 7 o'clock he went back to sleep, and at 7 o'clock he died. We like to think that he saw we were there. He saw that Mother was going to be still looked after, and he decided he'd done his stint. It still chokes me up a bit. And this was 4 years ago now, 5 years ago. Anyway, that's a little bit about me. So this series is finished, and I'm just going to say a cheerio for now. Cheerio.